In this video, we are going to create this responsive portfolio website using only HTML, CSS, and just a little bit of JavaScript. This is the About section. We have this really cool navbar with this hover effects and this button with the gradient hover effects. And these buttons, social media links, and this scroll bar also has the same gradient effect. This is the second section, experience. We have these cards and the image on the right. We also have the smooth scrolling between sections as well. Let's see the third one. This is the projects section. We have these really cool, simple designed cards. And this is the final section. We also have this little footer at the bottom. If you click on this logo, it will take you back to the top. Let's see about the responsiveness as well. Every section is responsive. The navbar as well. When the viewport gets smaller, we have this drop-down menu. As you can see, we have the same hover effects as well. So this is the About section. The image gets bigger and the text is at the bottom. Let's see the experience. We have the cards stacked on top of each other and the projects as well. And this is the final section. We are going to create everything from scratch and I will be explaining every single line of code. So let's get into it. So here I have my project folder. I just have some images inside that I'm going to use. If you want to use the same images, you can find the links in the description. As I said, we are going to create everything from scratch. So let's create a index.html file and a style.css, script.js file. Inside the index.html, using one exclamation mark, I will create this boilerplate. Let's change the title to portfolio website and link the style sheet. Inside the body, I will open up a script tag and search for the script.js file. So now the style.css and script.js file is linked to the HTML file. Inside the CSS file, I will select everything and set the margin and padding to 0. Set the box sizing to border box and set the font family to Poppins. Let's delete the text decoration and set the scroll behavior to smooth and delete the list style as well. The JavaScript file is going to be empty for now. Let's go back into the HTML file and close these tabs. Let's open this HTML file on the browser using Live Server. So here is the empty HTML file. There is only one thing left before we start, which is going to be adding the font awesome icons. We are going to use a couple of icons and it is going to be from this website. So in the description, find this link. We are going to add font awesome to our project as a style sheet. So click on copy URL. So back into the HTML file, inside this head section, open a link tag, and inside the href, let's copy that link. And now that we linked font awesome, we can use the icons and we are ready to start. So we are going to go part by part. The first part is going to be the header. Let's create a header with the class name header. Inside the header, we're going to have a logo, unordered list with some links, and a button. Let's create the logo using a anchor tag. The class is going to be logo. Let's create a span. We are going to style this span in order to create a text with gradient effect. Let's create a unordered list with the class name nav links. And let's have some list elements with some anchor tags inside. So this first one is going to be about. Let's copy and paste this. This one is going to be experience. Copy and paste it again. This one is going to be projects. And the final one is going to be contact. So outside this unordered list, but still inside the header, I will create a button with the class name visitBTN. Let's say visit GitHub. In between the unordered list and the button, we're gonna have a icon, which is going to be the menu icon. But right now it is not going to be visible. It is going to be only useful to us when we create the responsiveness to be able to create a drop-down menu when the viewport gets smaller. But we need to add this right now. So let's go into Font Awesome website. Click on icons and search for menu. We are going to use this one. Click on it and copy the snippet. Let's paste it between the unordered list and the button. Let's give it a ID so we can style it. We are done with the HTML of header. Let's style it. Let's select the header. So this header needs to stay at the top when you scroll down. So we are going to set its position to fixed. We're going to bring it just a little bit down from top, 1 rem. And we are going to center it using left 50% and transform translate x minus 50%. So left 50% brings the header into the center of the page, but not by its own center. So to center it completely, we need to use transform translate x, and this is going to center the header container from its own width, and in this way it is going to be completely centered. Let's make this a flex container. Align the items on the center. Let's put some gap between the elements and set the background color to a transparent black. Let's lower this down to 0.8. And to create that glass effect, I will use backdrop filter. It is going to be blur 8 pixels. Let's set the text color to white. Padding is going to be 0.5 and 1.5. So 0.5 rem at the top and the bottom and 1.5 on the sides. Let's create some rounded corners by using border radius 3 rem. And finally, we need to make sure that this header stays on top of everything else inside the page. And we're gonna do it by setting the Z index to a really high number. Let's select the logo, set the text color to white and increase the font size and the font weight as well. We are going to set the text wrap to no wrap because we have 2 words inside this logo. When the viewport gets smaller, the text is going to wrap, and to prevent this from happening, we need to set the text wrap to no wrap. Let's create a transition for the hover effect. And when you hover over it, we are going to make it just a little bit bigger. Let's select the nav links, make it a flex container and put some gap between the text. Let's select the list items and anchor tags, set the position to relative, color white and font weight 300. The reason why I set the position to relative is because we are going to create this hover effect, which we are going to use before, and this is going to create a element inside the page, and this element is going to be positioned relative to its parent element, which in this case it's the anchor tag, and that is why we set the position to relative. Content is going to be empty, width is going to be 0, it is going to be at the left, height is going to be 5 pixels. We're gonna place it right below the text, so top 25 pixels. Give it a little border radius and transition for the hover effect. And also for this line, we are going to create this linear gradient effect. to the right. I'm just going to copy and paste these colors. If you want to use the same colors, just pause the video and type down the same. And when you hover over the list item, this pseudo element is going to get a width of 100%, which was set to 0. Let's select the button, give it a padding of 0.8 and 1.5. Border radius is going to be 3 rem, and let's delete the border. Font weight 500, and the text size is going to be 1 rem. Let's make the text color white. Cursor is going to be pointer when you hover over this button. We're gonna set the text wrap on this one to no wrap as well, and this button is going to have a transition as well because we're gonna create a hover effect. Let's copy and paste this same linear gradient. And when you hover over it, we are going to make it just a little bit bigger using transform scale. And also let's reverse the color. So this pink color is going to get in front of this blue color. And finally, the menu icon, as I mentioned, we are going to style it by increasing the size. And for now, we are not going to display it because we don't need it right now. And this is it with the header. It looks like this now. The hover effects are working fine. The button is looking good. So we can go to the next part. So the next part is going to be the about section, and it is going to be right under this header. So let's create a section with the ID about and class about. Inside, we are going to create this about container and put the image on the top. Right under the image, we need to put some information in. So let's create another div with the class name infobox. The first one is going to be text. And let's have a span with the job title. So this is one group of text. Right under this, we're gonna have another group which is going to have buttons. So button group. We're gonna have two buttons. The first one is going to be download CV. And the second one is going to be contact. Right under this, we're gonna have another group of elements. This one is going to be socials, and it is going to have two icons inside. So inside Font Awesome, we're gonna look for a GitHub icon. Let's click on this, copy, and paste it inside. And let's look for a LinkedIn icon. Let's copy this one and paste it. And this is it with the HTML of the About section. Now let's style it. First, I will select the section and make it cover the entire page by setting the minimum height to 100 VH. Let's give it a padding of 8 rem and 12%. So 8 rem of padding at the top and the bottom, and 12% on the sides. Let's set the width to 100% and position to relative. Let's select the About section, make it a flex container, and align the items on the center, which in this case, it is the About container. Let's select the About container, make it a flex container as well, align item center, and justify content center. So in this case, we have two elements inside, which is the image and the info box. We put them side by side. So let's also put some gap between them. Select the image. Let's set the width to 30 VW, which means viewport width. So this image basically takes 30% of the viewport width. Let's make it a circle by setting the border radius to 50%. Let's select the text. So info box is going to be a flex container as well. Let's change the flex direction to column. Because info box has 3 divs inside, we basically want them to be stacked on top of each other. So that is why we set the flex direction to column. Let's align the text on the center and all the other items. Let's put some gap between them. Let's select that H3 and make it a lot bigger. Increase the font weight and lower down the opacity. Let's select the H1 and increase the font size and font weight. And for the span elements, we are going to use this background linear gradient. And I want the text to have this linear gradient. So I'm going to clip the text to the background and make the text transparent. And in this way, you can basically put the background color inside the text. Let's increase the font size to 2 rem. Let's select the button group, make it a flex container and put some gap between the buttons. The buttons are gonna have this rounded corners, padding of 0.5 and 1.5. Let's give it a black border. Cursor is going to be pointer when you hover over it, indicating that these buttons are clickable. Let's increase the font weight, and I will set the text wrap to no wrap on this one as well. And for the hover effects, we're gonna have this transition. And on hover, we are basically going to reverse the colors. So the background color is going to be black and color is going to be white. Let's select the social media icons, set the container to a flex container and put some gap between them. Let's make the icons a lot bigger. Let's make them clickable and transition. When you hover over it, we are going to make it bigger using scale. Let's make it 1.1. And this is it with the first section. The image is on the left and we have this text on the right. The hover effects are working fine. The text has the gradient effect. Everything looks fine, so we can go to the next part. Next part is going to be the experience section. Right under this about section, I will create another one with the ID experience and class experience. At the top, you're gonna have this title, section title, let's say experience, and under this one, you're gonna have this experience info div. So inside this div, we are going to create 4 cards, and creating card layouts is very easy with grid. So we are going to use grid for this one. Let's create a div with the class name grid, and the cards are going to have this class name grid card. So we are going to create 4 cards. At the top, there's going to be icons. So right under the icon, we're going to have this span, front-end development, let's say. You can put your own information, of course. And let's create a short paragraph. Copy and paste this 3 more times. And right under this grid, we are going to put the same image. Let's put the icons in. So inside the font awesome again, we're gonna look for some cool icons. Let's use this one. Copy and paste it. Let's copy this one and paste it. Let's copy this one. And finally, let's use this one. So we are done with the experience section as well. Let's go into the styling. First, we have the section title. Let's center it and increase the font size, increase the font weight, and put some little space at the bottom. Next, we are going to select the experience info, make it a flex container, and align the items inside on the center and put some gap between them. We are going to select the image and set the width to 24 viewport width. This time it is going to have a border radius of 3 rem, so it is not going to be a circle. Now let's select the grid and place the cards. So we have 4 cards and we need 2 columns. So let's set the display to grid and create columns. We're gonna have 2, and each of the columns are going to take 1 fraction of space. So they are going to be taking equal space inside this grid container. And let's put some gap between them. Let's select the grid card and give it a black border. Let's set the border radius to 3 rem and a padding of 3 rem. Make it a flex container and change the flex direction to column. We are going to align the text, the icons and everything on the left. So align items baseline and justify content left. Cursor is going to be pointer, and let's give it a transition for the hover effect. When you hover over the card, we're gonna make it bigger and set the background color to black and text to white. Let's also make the icons bigger and put some space at the bottom. And for the span elements inside the card, we are going to increase the font size and font weight, and we're going to use the same gradient text. So background clip text and color transparent. So now that we have 2 sections and we can scroll down, we can see the scroll bar. Let's also style the scroll bar as well. Let's set the width to 20 pixels. Let's select the track. Background color is going to be this gray color. And for the scroll bar thumb, I will copy and paste this background gradient, but it is not going to go to the right. It is going to go to the bottom. And this is it with this section. So the experience section looks like this. We have the cards and the text with the gradient effect, hover effects for the card, and image on the right. The scroll bar has the gradient effect as well. Everything looks fine. Now we can go to the next part. In this part, we are going to create the project section. Let's create a section with the ID of projects and the class name of projects. At the top, let's have this section title, recent projects, and right under this, we are going to have 3 cards. So let's create a grid container for those cards, and let's create a card. So project card. At the top of this card, we're gonna have these project images. Again, you can find the link in the description if you want to use these images. Right under this, let's create a h3 with the project name. Right under this, some little text. Under this, we're gonna have a button group and a button. Let's say live demo and this second button. So we are going to have 2 more of this card. So let's copy and paste it. Change this image to the second one. Change the project name. Copy and paste it one more time. Let's use the final image. And this is it with the projects section. And this is it with the projects section. So this is how it looks right now. We have the project images and these two buttons. We have used .btn class for those buttons, and they are already styled, so we don't have to style them one more time. So let's go into the CSS file. Let's select the projects grid and set the display to grid. This time we are going to be creating columns by using AutoFit. So this is basically going to automatically fit these three cards side by side by creating three columns. We also need to use this function called min-max to define a minimum width and a maximum width, which in this case we have cards inside, so let's make them 300 pixels at minimum and 1 fraction at maximum. And let's put some gap between them, 2 rem. Let's style the project card, give it a padding of 3 rem at the top and the bottom and 2 rem on the sides. Let's make it a flex container and change the flex direction to column. Align everything in the center using align items center, justify content center, and text align center. Let's put some gap between the elements inside, create a black border and give it a little rounded corner. Cursor is going to be pointer when you hover over the cards. And for the hover effect, let's give it a transition. So when you hover over the project card, the background color is going to be black, text color is going to be white, and we are going to move the card up by 10 pixels. And we're going to make it just a bit bigger using scale. So you can chain transform effects like this. We are going to move the card up by 10 pixels and scale it up at the same time. Also, let's make the images a lot smaller. So let's set the width to 20 viewport width and give it a little border radius. Also, when you hover over the project card, the button is going to have a white border and white text. And while you are hovering over the card and you hover over the button, the border is going to be 2 pixel solid white, background is going to be white, and text color black. Let's also make that h3 bigger, font size 2 rem, and font weight 500. And the cards are looking like this. So when you hover over the card, we basically reverse the styling of the buttons, and while you're hovering over the card, when you hover over the button, we basically revert it back, and it looks really cool. This part is done as well, and we can go to the next one. In this part, we are going to create the last two sections, which is going to be the contact input and the footer. Let's create a section with the class name contact and ID contact. So inside we are going to have this input box, and inside this input box at the top, let's have the section title, contact me, and under this, let's create another div with the class name input. Inside we're gonna have this input element with the placeholder of a example email. And right next to this input, we're gonna have a icon. So let's go back into Font Awesome and look for a envelope. Let's use this one. Copy and paste it right under this. And finally, outside this input, let's create a button with the class name btn. And this is it with the contact section. Let's create the footer. Inside the footer, you're gonna have this unordered list with a list item and a anchor tag inside. About. Let's copy this. This one is going to be experience. And these are the links inside the footer. Right outside this unordered list, we're gonna have this paragraph with the class name copyright. And let's type down a copyright text. And with this, we have completed the HTML part. Now let's see how it looks. And as you can see, the contact section looks like this now. And the footer. So let's style them. I will select the input box and make it a flex container. Change the flex direction to column. Let's center everything. And put some gap between the elements. And we are going to put 5 rem of space at the top of this input box. For the input, we are going to set the position relative, because we are going to be positioning this icon relative to its parent element to be able to put it right next to this input. Let's give it a little border radius and a black border. A padding of 2 rem and 8 rem, and increase the font size. Let's increase the placeholder of the input as well to, let's say, 3 rem. And I just realized I made a small error. The position relative is not going to be for the input itself, this one. It is going to be for this container. So let's delete this. And by selecting the input class name, we are going to give this one the position of relative. And now we can style and position this icon relative to this parent element. Let's select the icon and set the position to absolute. Increase the font size to 4. And we are going to move it from top 50% to left 10 pixels. And using translate, let's move it up by 50% and bring it to the right by 50%. And now it is perfectly aligned with the text. Next, let's style the footer. So the footer is going to stay at the bottom. So bottom 0, left 0, and let's give it a height of 10 rem and a width of 100% so it covers the entire width. Let's make it a flex container and change the flex direction to column and put some gap between the elements and center them. Let's select the unordered list and make it a flex container as well and align the items on the horizontal line and some space between them. Let's change the text color to black and increase the font weight to 600. And finally, the copyright text. Let's set the font size to 300. Doesn't need to be too bold. And a small space at the top. And the contact section looks like this. The footer has the same underline effect as the navbar. Let's take a look. Everything looks fine. The cards, the hover effects. The only thing left is to make this responsive. So for the responsiveness, we are going to have 3 breakpoints. The first one is going to be 1280 pixels. The second one is going to be 768. And the final one is going to be 600. So let's start with the first one. Once we go down under this number of width inside the viewport, header is going to have less padding, so 1 rem to 2 rem, and we are also going to decrease the gap between the elements inside. Let's select the about container. The image and the cards are going to have less gap between them. And the experience section, we are going to change the flex direction to column. And as you can see, the cards are now at the top and the image is at the bottom. And for the input section, we are going to have far more less padding for the input, and we're going to decrease the font size. Same thing goes for the placeholder text of the input as well. Let's decrease it to 2.5 rem. And the icon is going to be smaller as well. So right now the contact input looks like this. So let's go into the second breakpoint. So this time the header is going to have less gap between the elements, and padding is going to be less smaller. We are also going to decrease the font size of the logo. And at this point, we are not going to be displaying the logo anymore. The input box, input element is going to have less padding than before, and we're going to decrease the font size again. Placeholder as well. And at this point, we are not going to be displaying the icon anymore. And finally, the grid inside the experience section is going to have fixed columns. So it is going to be one column, and the image is going to be a lot bigger. So if I scroll down, you can see we have only one column for the experience section. So the cards are stacked on top of each other, and the image is a lot bigger. And for the project section, we don't even need to set the columns to a single column because it has auto fit. So it basically automatically creates this one column. And the contact input looks like this. The only thing left inside this breakpoint is to create a drop-down menu inside the navbar. First, we are going to be displaying the menu icon. So let's set it to display block. Let me make this viewport a bit smaller so we can see the icon. And there you can see the icon. For the header section, which is the nav links, I will set the position to absolute, top 100%, and a small space at the top. Let's set the width to 100% as well. Give it a padding of 1 rem. Text color white. Let's make it a flex container and change the flex direction to column. Align the text on the center and give it a background color of this transparent black. Let's make it 0.9. Let's give it a little border radius as well. Let's select the list items and put some space between them using margin top and a little padding. So we are done with the styling of this menu. Now we are going to set it to display none. And when this nav links gets the class of active, it is going to be displayed as a block element. And we are going to be doing this using JavaScript. Now we are not displaying the menu. Using JavaScript, when you click on the menu icon, we're going to give this navlinks element a class of active. And when it gets the class of active, we are going to be displaying the navigation list. Let's select the header and give it a padding of 1 rem and 5 rem. At this point, we only have the logo and the menu icon left inside the header, so we can put more space between them. Let's also increase the size of the logo as well. And let's make the image a lot bigger. And make the input smaller. So let's set the padding to 0.5 to 3 rem. Set the width to 80% and increase the font size. And the same thing goes for the placeholder. Increase the font size. And finally, let's put more gap between the elements inside the unordered list for the footer. So everything is looking fine except the first section. By the looks of it, we forget to change the flex direction for this one. Let's see. So inside this second breakpoint, let's select the about container and change the flex direction to column. And looks like we fixed it. So finally, by using a really small amount of JavaScript, we are going to make the drop-down menu work. We are going to be selecting two elements from this HTML file, which is going to be this unordered list, which is nav links, because we are going to be displaying it and not displaying it. So we need to put this in a variable inside the JavaScript. And this menu icon, we are going to be creating a function for this. So let's go into JavaScript. Let's say menu icon. And by accessing the document and using query selector, I will select the menu icon and put it inside this variable. And also the navigation links. Again, using query selector, I will put the navigation links inside this variable. And we are going to create only one function, which is going to be a onClick function. So when you click on this menu icon, which comes from this HTML file, this icon, we are going to add a class from class list to navigation links, and we are going to toggle this class, and the class is going to be active. As you may remember, inside this CSS, inside this breakpoint, we set the navigation links to display none, and once this class gets the class of active, we start to display them. And now by using JavaScript, when you click on this menu icon, we add the active class to the navigation links, and the menu will be displayed. And there you go. Here is the menu. It still have the underline effect. It has a transparent background. So let's take a final look before we finish. This is the first section. As you can see, the drop-down menu works. You can scroll through the website by clicking on them. This is the experience section. And the projects section. And finally, the contact form. And the footer. So this is how we can create this responsive portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.